It was the bitter winter of 1944. The Ardennes Forest, blanketed in snow and silence, seemed an unlikely stage for one of World War II's most dramatic armoured clashes. Yet here, in these frozen hills, Hitler launched his last great gamble, the Battle of the Bulge. For the Germans, success meant splitting the Allied front, seizing the port of Antwerp, and perhaps forcing the Western Allies to the negotiating table. For the Americans, it meant survival, holding ground against a sudden, ferocious onslaught. At the heart of this offensive rolled a terrifying machine, the Panzerkampfwagen 6 AUSF B, better known as the King Tiger, weighing nearly 70 tons, with sloped armour thicker than anything the Allies could reliably penetrate, and armed with the long 88mm KWK-43 gun. It was designed to dominate battlefields. On December 18th, one such column was led by SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper. His orders were clear: push west through Belgian villages like Stavelot, seize the bridges, and capture desperately needed fuel. As dawn broke, the rumble of tracks echoed through the forest. Ahead lay icy roads, exhausted defenders, and a mission upon which the fate of Germany's last offensive now rested. Peiper knew time was against him. Though the King Tigers were formidable, they were far too slow for the lightning thrust demanded by Hitler's plan. If he hoped to seize bridges before American engineers could destroy them, he needed speed, and that meant sending in his medium Panther tanks first. 2 Panthers roared down the narrow road towards Stavelot, their engines straining against icy slopes. But as they rounded a bend, American defenders waited in ambush. A 57mm anti-tank gun barked fire, striking the lead Panther. The round pierced its armour, and flames engulfed the tank in seconds. The column threatened to stall, yet the second Panther pressed forward with reckless determination. Gears grinding, the massive machine thundered over the American position, crushing the anti-tank gun beneath its treads. Soldiers scattered as the steel giant stormed through the village, spraying fire from its coaxial machine gun, silencing resistance and clearing the way. Against desperate odds, the Panthers broke through. But the victory was costly. Already, precious time had been lost, and the weight of the attack shifted back onto Peiper's slow-moving King Tigers. Every delay meant more American reinforcements, and fewer chances of breaking free into the open countryside beyond. With the path into Stavelot open, Peiper unleashed his heavy armour. King Tigers rolled forward one by one, each tank shaking the ground as it crossed the bridge over the Amblev River. Civilians watched in fear as the massive beasts clattered through their narrow streets, dwarfing the houses they passed. Their objective was simple yet urgent: capture the nearby American fuel dump. Peiper's entire armoured column was running dangerously low on gasoline. Without it, even the most powerful tank in the world was nothing more than a frozen steel monument in the snow. But the Americans were not blind to the danger. Major Paul J. Solis, commanding nearby, understood that if Peiper seized the dump, the German offensive could push far deeper into Allied lines. As German tanks advanced, Solis made a fateful decision: order his men to destroy their own supplies. Explosions erupted, barrels of precious fuel burst into flames, sending black smoke high into the winter sky. Peiper could only watch in fury as thousands of gallons of gasoline, his lifeline, vanished in fire. The King Tigers had arrived, but without fuel, their strength meant little. Already, the seeds of Peiper's failure were being sown in the snow of Stavelot. While Peiper drove westward in search of more supplies, Stavelot itself was left lightly defended. The German infantry clung to positions within shattered houses and along narrow streets, awaiting orders and reinforcements. Their control was fragile, an outpost holding back a flood. That flood came swiftly. From the south, American reinforcements advanced. Sherman tanks, M10 tank destroyers, and fresh infantrymen determined to retake the town. As the first rays of sunlight reflected on their armour, the Americans opened fire. Shells smashed into German-held buildings, and machine guns rattled across the snow-draped rooftops. German defenders sent frantic calls for support. If Stavelot fell, Peiper's advance would collapse behind him. The message reached Obersturmführer Jürgen Wessel, commander of a company of King Tigers advancing nearby. Wasting no time, Wessel turned his column north. He knew the risks. His heavy tanks were clumsy in the steep, icy terrain, and the enemy already held the high ground. Yet he also knew failure was not an option. Stavelot was the key to Piper's entire mission, and if the Americans captured it, the dream of breaking through to the Meuse would end before it truly began. As Wessel's company approached Stavelot, they immediately came under heavy fire. Shells burst around the advancing Tigers, throwing snow and debris into the air. Yet Wessel refused to falter. He drove his command tank forward, determined to inspire his men. But the Americans were ready. Concealed among the hills, an M10 tank destroyer locked onto Wessel's Tiger. Its gun cracked, the shot slamming into the King Tiger's barrel. The weapon was crippled. Wessel ordered his driver to reverse, seeking cover. Another shell rocked the tank, shaking the crew inside. Desperate, Wessel directed his driver to push straight through a nearby house. The timber structure collapsed in an explosion of dust and tiles, but the maneuver proved disastrous. The roof caved in, the engine stalled, and the Tiger ground to a halt. Wessel and his crew had no choice but to abandon their steel fortress. Undaunted, Wessel commandeered another King Tiger and continued fighting. But American resistance only intensified. From above, the roar of engines announced a new threat, P-47 Thunderbolts. Diving low, they unleashed rockets into the German column. One after another, King Tigers burst into flames. Wessel's gamble had failed. The Battle of the Bulge was more than tanks and artillery. It was also fought in shadows, with deception and disguise. As chaos engulfed Stavelot, American troops began to report strange encounters. Soldiers in familiar uniforms approached, speaking English, driving jeeps. Yet, something was wrong. The accents were odd, the equipment not quite right. These were no allies. They were German commandos of Operation Stavelot, men trained by Otto Skorzeny and dressed in captured American uniforms. Their mission was to infiltrate Allied lines, spread confusion, misdirect reinforcements, and sabotage communications. At Stavelot, however, the ruse collapsed. When challenged at a checkpoint, the disguised Germans hesitated. Questions about baseball, American slang, and unit designations exposed their charade. In moments, machine guns cut them down. Their bodies fell on the very bridge they sought to secure. Though a small episode, it revealed the strange, desperate lengths to which Germany now resorted. On this battlefield, not even uniforms could be trusted. For weary American defenders, every shadow, every sound in the snowy night could be a friend or an enemy wearing a friend's face. The battle around Stavelot raged on. From the south, a King Tiger designated 222 attempted to break through the encirclement. The tank's enormous silhouette made it an easy target. Hidden in ambush, an M10 tank destroyer fired. The first shot ripped through the tracks, immobilizing the beast. The second struck its side, shaking the armoured giant. A third hit sealed its fate. Flames licked from its hatches as the crew scrambled to escape. Elsewhere, another King Tiger, number 133, fought a desperate duel. Surrounded by Shermans and M10s, the Tiger seemed unstoppable at first. Shell after shell bounced harmlessly from its sloped armour. But in the narrow streets, sheer size became a curse. Manoeuvrability was impossible. Pinned, damaged, and cut off from support, the crew finally abandoned their once invincible machine. Each loss was a blow, not just in numbers, but in morale. These tanks, symbols of German strength, were proving vulnerable. For all their power, they could not overcome the relentless tide of American determination, combined arms, and superior mobility. Slowly, the battlefield shifted. The King Tigers, once terrifying predators, were being reduced to silent wrecks in the snow. As the fight for Stavelot reached its climax, the Americans prepared their final stroke. Engineers crept beneath the bridge spanning the Amblève, their hands freezing as they placed charges against the stone supports. Overhead, German fire raked the riverbanks, but the work continued. 1,000 pounds of explosives were wired, checked, and armed. When the order came, the fuse was lit. Moments later, a thunderous explosion split the air. the bridge disintegrated in a shower of stone and fire, collapsing into the icy river below. The road westward, the vital artery Piper needed to reach Antwerp, was severed. For Piper's men, the destruction was a death sentence. No reinforcements could cross, no supplies could flow in. Their advance was trapped in a shrinking pocket, cut off from the offensive's wider momentum. The King Tigers stood powerless on the river's edge, their steel hulls reflecting the flames of the shattered bridge. For all their might, they could not rebuild what explosives had erased. In that moment, the dream of reaching Antwerp collapsed with the bridge. Hitler's gamble was crumbling, and the Ardennes was becoming a graveyard for his last armoured hopes. By December 20th, the truth was unavoidable. Piper's column was finished. Surrounded by American forces, out of fuel and short on ammunition, the once proud spearhead of the German offensive could no longer fight. The order was given: abandon the vehicles and retreat on foot. For the crews of the King Tigers, it was a bitter moment. They had poured heart and soul into their machines, trusting in the thick armour and devastating firepower that once gave them confidence against any enemy. Now those same tanks stood silent, abandoned in snow-covered fields and forests. Without fuel, they were nothing but frozen hulks, monuments to desperation. Through the icy woods, Piper's men trudged in darkness, leaving behind the burning wrecks that had once symbolized German strength. They carried no victory, only exhaustion, cold, and the knowledge that their mission had failed. The Ardennes offensive, which had promised so much, had been stopped not just by American resilience, but by the limitations of Germany's own war machine. For the men who walked away that night, the snow muffled every step, but it could not silence the bitter truth. The King Tigers had roared and then fallen silent forever. The Battle of the Bulge would rage for weeks more, but the German offensive was broken. At Stavelot, the King Tiger showed both its terrifying power and its fatal weakness. Too heavy for the terrain, too thirsty for fuel, too late to change the course of the war. Today, a single King Tiger still stands at La Glaise, a silent reminder of a desperate gamble, a legend born in steel and broken in snow.